Hi everyone, welcome to week 10 assignment about Paul's social or cross-cultural boundaries, responsibilities, or his cultural context influence. This week's lessons have taught me a lot about Paul and his missions and the strategies that he used to win souls for Christ or to bring more people or the Gentiles to follow Christ. The need for radical generosity and the setting or the area I want to cite is Ghana, where I originally come from. And Ghana, being a third world country, is a country where, especially in the villages and then the small towns, most people have the need or will embrace generosity. And in this instance, if you use what Paul was doing, or if you want to take Paul's strategy, it will really fit to such settings. I would say these are areas where people yearn for things like food, basic food or basic supplies, clothing, and whatever you can think of. I remember as a child, I saw missionaries coming from Europe to Ghana to spread the gospel, and whenever they come, they don't come empty-handed. They come with clothing, they come with gifts, and they were so generous to the people. And this was one of the ways they used to attract, especially the youth, to their crusades, which were held outside rooms. Unlike in the Western world, where normally crusades are held in rooms and then in halls, in Africa and in Ghana, for that matter, we organize crusades outside rooms where a lot of people can be attracted to come. So they use some of these things to attract people to come, and they can have the chance to share the gospel to them. And I think Paul was so smart in using this kind of strategy to be generous to the people who are in need. And in so doing, we realize Paul was able to bring people together. The goal is to be generous in this instance, is to be able to meet the needs of the people and attract them to the gospel. Because as you give to them, they will come, and whatever you tell them, they will listen. Especially if it's the gospel which carries supernatural power to change the mindset of people. So I think it was a good strategy, and then it could be used in Ghana, where I come from. Another strategy will be to subvert the cultural values of these people, as Paul also did through servant leadership. That's what I call true servant leadership, and not lording over the people. When we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19 to 22, Paul talks about how he made himself as a slave to win people to the gospel. So the Bible said that when he gets to the Jews, he made himself like a Jew just to win them to Christ. And this is the same method that we can also use, or one can use, by being a servant leader, by humbling yourself, making yourself like them, to ensure you'll be able to touch them through the gospel. And also, one can teach ethical values to the church by mentioning what is expected by the church to operate as a community, in reference to 1 Corinthians 12, verse 2. So you change their narrative, you change their mindset, they renew their minds through some of your teachings by subverting their cultural values. One can focus on the needy and the poor in those areas to reach out to unbelievers to win them to Christ. The limitations, I mean, there are a lot of limitations to this, because I remember personally doing something like this to the widows and orphans and the needy in my church, as I mentioned in my last video. And at a point in time, I realized I couldn't do it alone with my wife, because it was coming from our own resources to support these widows. And I realized it was a limitation, because through giving to the widows, more people from the community were attracted to the church because they heard about it. and they all began to come to the church. And it got to a point in time that I couldn't do because of lack of resources. So it's one of the limitations that anyone who wants to reach out to the poor and being generous is likely to face. And then, because of lack of resources, it will become very difficult to sustain some of these projects or some of these ideas, because you cannot do it over and over again, and sustaining it will be quite difficult. I don't know how Paul did it, but I, I'm sure if he had done or continuously do this from his own pocket to a particular group of people, it will get to a point in time that it may be difficult. But we know Paul was not living at one place. He used to move from one town to another town, spreading the gospel, and he was teaching the disciples or the followers of Christ how to be generous, how to be submissive, and then he goes about spreading the gospel. So I'm not sure Paul was just at one place and being generous, but he was teaching the disciples around him to also follow his footsteps. Um, Again, by focusing on the impoverished or the needy, one may unintentionally ignore other influential community leaders or members who may play a significant role in sharing the gospel within their own networks. So it's clearly stated here. I mean, if you focus basically on the needy, on the poor, on the widows, which is good, you may be neglecting people in the society who may also be helpful uh, in spreading the gospel. So we want to be mindful of some of these things, not to overemphasize on only the poor, the needy, the widow, the orphans in society, by trying to reach out to everybody who may be also beneficial to spread the gospel. What can one do? Uh, so several strategies can be put together or may be useful in mitigating the drawbacks of using poor strategy. One of them will be taking part in training to gain deeper understanding of local cultures and beliefs. So we need to partake in training and know the values of the people that we want to reach out to. Knowing this will be able to help us to know how to approach them by not um, faulting them or by not offending them in any way. And this will guarantee courteous and knowledgeable exchanges of values. Two, we can sustain this outreach or by giving by not focusing on one-time acts of generosity, um, uh, by I mean including community development projects that will empower residents to have a sustainable income. So instead of just giving to the poor or be generous to them, I think we can have something like a project that will be able to generate income consistently to the poor, so that they will not be reliant on one person or on the church every time for their needs. And then respectfully, we can acknowledge and interact with traditional believers and custom or the leaders of the place to identify points of agreement, um, or outline how the gospel can enhance pre-existing values. So these are few things that I have written that I have already sent. So I wait to hear from you with your comments and with your suggestions. Thank you so much.